This Week in Parasitism is brought to you by the American Society for Microbiology at microbeworld.org/TWiP. This Week in Parasitism, episode number 55, recorded on June 14th, 2013. Hey everybody, I'm Vincent Racaniello, and with me is Dickson Despommier.
Hello there, Vincent.
I wouldn't be with anyone else for TWiP, would I?
You could, but it's hard to find somebody else to do this.
Yeah.
You know, there aren't too many parasites sitting out there that are willing to go on the air and talk about them.
Certainly no one here.
No, unfortunately, that's true.
And the beauty of this is that you and I can sit across the desk as we are now.
Yep.
There should be a camera here.
You're stuck with me.
Right? There should be a camera filming this, and then people could see how I give you the finger.
And then I give it back.
Or the elbow.
Vince has given me the finger so much, he's had to regenerate so many fingers. It's
Actually,
been amazing.
I don't. I give you the elbow.
No, it's okay. It's a friendly gesture on his part.
How have you been, Dickson?
I've been very well, thanks, Vince.
Traveling?
Yep.
Okay.
I have.
Where have you been?
Well, over the last 2 months, I've been to Berlin.
Good.
Not New Hampshire, Berlin, Germany.
Germany.
Yeah, Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. To Den Bosch,
Where's that?
which is in the Netherlands.
And these are all separate trips?
No, the one trip was from Berlin to Edinburgh and then back home.
Oh,
I actually spoke at the Edinburgh Science Festival.
Edinburgh.
Which was great.
Edinburgh.
You know what my highlight of the trip was?
Edinburgh.
I got to pass by the cafe, the Elephant Cafe. Do you know the significance of the elephant? It's where Harry Potter was written.
The whole thing she wrote there?
Well, she started
it?
She started there, yeah. It says,
All right.
home of the beginnings of Harry Potter. Anyway.
They're not going to say that about you. This is where Dickson started his book.
This is where he ended. The end.
What should we do today?
I think we should talk about something in nature that has nothing to do with humans, but has something to do with the way life has networked itself into the interstices of the fabric of ecosystems.
This has anything to do with parasitism?
Yes, it does.
All
Of
right.
course, you can't leave out parasitism. It's an integral part of life on Earth.
So let me ask you, if you look anywhere,
Yeah.
will you see an example of parasitism?
If you look hard enough, you will.
Here I see you, and you're full of parasites, right?
Well, we're full of symbionts that we've come to sort of a peace agreement with. Yep, that's
Yeah.
what our microbiome is.
So you don't think you have any parasites at the moment? Probably not. You feel fine?
No, that's not true, Vince. I could have picked up toxoplasma as
You ever been tested?
a mediator. Yeah, I have, actually. And
Could you have Plasmodium noli?
Noel's eye.
Noel's eye?
No, not likely.
How about
Not likely.
Mycobacterium
Tuberculosis.
tuberculosis?
I hope I don't have that. That's a bad one.
And elsewhere in this office, this is a built environment, so probably.
It's pretty sterile.
But if we went outside, you could point out.
We've been outside.
Why don't you and I go in the woods and you can point out all the parasitic interactions?
I don't think I'm
You're not the right person to do
not
that?
the right person. I'm not prepared to do that. That's unfortunate. I wish I could do that, but I wasn't trained to do that. I was trained to...
Well, I need to find someone who can do that.
There are people out there that do that for a living. You know, the wildlife parasitologists.
Yeah, I know.
And they're very gifted and very dedicated people because they're not paid very well, which is a shame.
But they're driven by their fever.
They're driven by their passion, and that's the big lesson here, is that you should always follow your passion, and the money will follow.
Money.
Or the livelihood will
Or
follow.
lack thereof.
How about that? Or the lack thereof.
So you
that's
wanted
right.
to talk about an arrangement in nature. Okay.
I do. I was attracted to this story because it appeared in two different publications at the same time almost. I subscribe to Chemical and Engineering News.
Why?
Because I find it very interesting to delve into the chemical industry world mind. All right, the mind of a chemical engineer is a lot different than the life and mindset of, let's say, you and I.
It's really about chemical engineers?
No, but it's a chemical story. It's a chemical story that revolves around an invading organism.
Okay.
All right.
And who is the invading organism?
The invading organism happens to be the apparently harmless, benign, lovable ladybug, or the ladybird, as it's sometimes referred to.
They call it the Harlequin Ladybird.
They do.
But,
They
no.
do.
When I was a kid, I called them ladybugs, and
Me
I
too.
still do. What's this ladybird?
And what is the poem associated with it?
I don't know that.
Oh, sure you do.
Ladybird, ladybird, fly away.
Your
mama's something.
your house is on fire.
What does that refer to?
I have no. I think it might relate to the great fires of London back in the 1600s. Who knows?
Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home. Your house is on fire, and your children are gone.
Are gone?
Your children are gone.
I thought they shall burn.
All except one, and her name is Anne, and she hid under the baking pan.
Uh-oh. That's the complete poem?
That's the original one. Then there's a shorter...
Wait, what's that from, though? Why did they...
It's a traditional English verse.
English verse, it must have...
1744.
Ah, you see. It might be based on some real event, like the London fire or something like this.
There's a grimmer, shorter version. Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home. Your house is on fire. Your children shall burn. Ooh.
Right. So hurry home and get them out.
And there are many, many versions here, apparently. I guess I should put a link to this
I think so.
in the show notes.
That's right. We do a little poetry here, a little cultural
Do you know any
enrichment.
other poems?
I know a lot of...
I know one in French.
Sure, I know.
About ants. La fourmi ayant chanté tout l'été se trouva fort dépourvue quand la bise fut venue.
Très bon.
Merci.
We'll do the rest of this podcast in French.
No, I can't do that.
Bonjour, Vincent. Comment ça va?
Ça va?
Ça va bien?
Ça va bien?
Ah, ça va bien.
If it doesn't go well, what do you say?
Ah, no, ça
Ça
va
va
bien.
mal?
Ça va la malatesta.
People are going to hate your French accent.
I don't have a French accent.
All right. Back to the Harlequin
So it's
Ladybird.
also known as the Harlequin Ladybird, or the Harlequin Ladybug. And so what is the icon that people think about when they look at a ladybird or a ladybug? What is that icon?
It's a ladybug.
No, it's a Volkswagen Beetle.
You think?
I know.
You know, this morning when I dropped my daughter at school, we were behind in a exterminator van.
Right.
And it had a picture of a ladybug on it.
I've seen them decorated like the Harlequin Beetles.
You know, I guess that's to get rid of ladybugs because they can go in your house, right?
Well, ladybugs are actually good. They're pest controllers.
I think they're beautiful.
They are.
When they land on me, I'm always
Yeah.
careful to put them somewhere safe. I don't want to
Exactly.
crush them.
No, you don't, because they are good for
They're
you.
so pretty. They're cool. They're red with
They
dots.
are. They're
We're
lovely.
going
And
to put one in the picture for this episode.
there's apparently one that's got 7 dots on its back.
Oh, they have different numbers?
They do.
We're getting into This Week in Entomology here, which you don't know anything about. Actually, you know a lot compared to what I know.
Well, that doesn't say much.
Nice.
No, all I know...
I set that up.
Oh, wait. But I've actually had formal courses in entomology, Vince. I've had medical entomology.
That's right. No. And throughout all the TWiPs, you have clearly demonstrated a good knowledge of
Well...
medical entomology.
Oh, shucks. No. I must say that every time something arises that we are unsure of, we have the internet as our best friend that we can go look things up. And I also have a wonderful companion. That's not a companion. I didn't mean to say that. A wonderful collaborator and a teacher in our course in parasitic diseases, Robert Guads, who's been a guest on this show, who is a bona fide entomologist.
I have a feeling that he didn't tell us enough about bugs on his one episode.
You're
Could he
right.
come back and talk more?
Sure.
Could he go on and on?
He could. He's a good raconteur. He's great.
Let's let him tell bug stories.
I would like him to.
All right.
I would like him to.
He's your buddy. Call him up and ask him.
Right. I will do that.
All right, back to the Harlequin Ladybird. Why is it called a Harlequin?
Well, because it's a little bit like the Harlequin clown. You know, the multicolored clown with the patchwork outfit. Somebody names these things. I mean, and then they just stick with them.
Right.
So
So
the
this is a
Volkswagen Beetle is an icon which was probably inspired by looking at this bird, this ladybird, or this ladybug. By the way, it's called ladybug, but it's not really a bug, right? So bugs are hemipterans, Vince, and bugs can bite you, and they can make you like bed bugs, for instance. Whereas this is a beetle, and beetles don't really have piercing mouth parts.
Okay.
But
So
they're
it's not
but
a
they're
bug.
but they're carnivorous nonetheless. It's not a bug. It's a coleopteran, which is the order name for beetles.
Okay. This is the inordinate fondness for beetles, right?
There you go. And who
So-
said that first?
E.O. Wilson?
No,
Thomas Eisner?
no.
I don't know.
Charles.
Darwin?
Yep,
He did?
he did.
Oh, but Wilson had a book called that,
That's right.
which I borrowed from you ages ago before we did any podcast.
I don't think that's an E.O. Wilson book, to be honest with you. It's
No?
a picture book of the beautiful arrays of beetles spread out as though they were jewels. An inordinate fondness of
I
beetles.
got it. It's the first thing that comes up. J.B.S. Haldane. That's
See?
the guy who originally said it.
Oh, he did? Okay, I take it back then.
And the author is Arthur Evans and
Right.
Charles Bellamille.
Right. It's a beautiful
Bellamy,
book.
sorry.
It's for the listeners. That's my pick of the week, by the way, for
We
this
don't
one.
do picks.
But we're going to do one for this one because it's such a wonderful book. I would like everyone to know it.
We have a Dickson's pick, but we have a listener pick today, so we might as well.
Yeah, we might as well do that. And by the way, you know why we know so much about beetles?
I don't know anything about beetles.
No, but we know a lot
the
about them.
collective we as humanity. Yeah.
Because they're easy to find.
If you would like to work on beetles, is it hard to get a job?
I think if you don't get a job at the American Museum of Natural History, you're going to have a tough time making a living studying beetles.
Well, these groups are in universities, but they're in Germany.
They
Decent.
are, but this is not a beetleologist. This guy studies ecology.
He's
He's
not
an
a beetle.
ecologist.
So, what would you call a person who studies beetles?
Coleopteran. Coleopterist.
Okay. So you're saying in universities there's no research on coleoptera?
I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that at all.
Yeah, I think that would be bad to say.
There is research, but those people don't just study beetles ordinarily. But usually they're pest control people. They're sponsored. The research is sponsored by agricultural ministries of agriculture and things. Because beetles can be pests, or beetles can be friends. They can actually control pests.
And so you could go to college and major in entomology,
You can.
but not every college is going to have that major.
No, but agricultural schools have something called agricultural entomology.
So Cornell would have a major.
Oh, wait! You mentioned the heart of. That's where entomology was invented.
That's where I went to school.
I know.
I didn't take any entomology
It's
courses when I was there.
How did you avoid that?
It just wasn't available for me.
If you
I don't know
look
why.
at the birth of modern entomology as a science, it began first at Cornell.
Is that right? I didn't
Yeah,
know that. I thought it was
sure.
Ohio State.
No, sorry about that. Even though they might want to say that, they would know better. They know that Cornell.
Okay.
And Cornell has wonderful entomology at many levels, including stream ecology, and which is what I'm familiar with as a trout fisherman. You sort of keep track of that stuff.
Yep.
But their primary goal is to get rid of agricultural insect pests.
Okay. Let's get back to our story.
Sure.
Harlequin
But this is one of
Ladybird.
those. This is one of those pests.
This is a pest?
Well, it can be, and that's what this story is all about.
But
There's,
I think
there's a lot of intrigue.
Tell us about why it's here. Where's
Because-
the origin? What's the native habitat of the Harlequin Ladybird?
Somewhere in Europe.
I thought it was China. I thought it was Asia.
That's right. The Asian ladybugs, and you're absolutely right. You're
Somewhere in Europe. Get your
but-
geography down,
But
man.
it was introduced from Europe into the United States.
So it went from Asia to Europe to the U.S.
Yes.
Why are we bringing this all over
Because
the
it's a
place?
pest controller. It eats aphids, and aphids are attackers of commercially viable plants like
Really?
wine grapes, for
Why don't
instance.
you just spray them with DDT?
Yeah, well, they used to do that, actually. They did. Then the
And
aphids.
you know what? I think biological controls have their issues also.
Of course they do.
All right. So in addition to, so we brought in who approved bringing these
That's
ladybugs
a
to the U.S.
great question, Vince. That's a great
Do
question.
you need
because-
to get approval for such a thing?
Well, sometimes these things appear unexpectedly. They can transport them into countries via goods.
And you know the Japanese beetles?
Yes.
So-
I know about those.
So when I was a kid, they appeared and they were everywhere.
That's
now,
right.
why they came over in a boat or something?
No, someone brought them over because
Why?
they thought they were pretty.
Oh my gosh, you're serious?
I'm serious.
Like a pet dealer or something?
It started in Camden, New Jersey. The outbreak of Japanese beetles in the United States started. The epicenter was Camden, New Jersey.
So they were invasive, right?
Well, they were introduced, and then they became invasive.
So not everything introduced will be invasive.
Correct. Right? There are things that will not allow the invader to
Right.
take hold, and then in other cases, there is no niche filled that this invader has to compete with. Okay, so remember, and I mean, I know we're backtracking a little bit, but this is an ecological subject. I had the privilege once of meeting G. Evelyn Hutchinson. Now, somebody out there may know who that is that's listening to TWiP, and although you may not know who that is. So this guy was a Yale biologist. He was an ecologist who established the concept of the niche.
According to Wikipedia, he invented modern ecology.
He did.
Wow.
He did. And he was a Yale person, and he established the Yale School of Forestry as well. So during his travels, while I was a graduate student at Notre Dame, because Notre Dame had a very good but small department of ecology and plant ecology, G. Evelyn Hutchinson came as a visiting professor, and I got to sit down with him along with a lot of other students and ask questions and that sort of thing. Not actually appreciating his importance in ecology. But he wrote an essay at a dinner that was held in his honor called Concluding Remarks. It's just called Concluding Remarks. And I have my students try to read this article because it's an explanation using mathematics to explain why one niche can be occupied by a single species only.
What is a niche?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the difficult part of this. There are two difficult parts. One is to describe what a niche is, and the other is to describe what a species is, because neither one has a solid, ironclad definition. But using theoretical assumptions and mathematics, G. Evelyn Hutchinson derived a formula which, in the end, said that if these assumptions are true, then only one species at a time can occupy a given niche. Now, the niche is described, if it's the essential niche, then it includes all the factors associated with living in that particular space.
It's not just the physical place, but it's the food web.
The place is called a habitat.
Right.
All right? That's different. The niche itself has
everything.
Huge ramifications in chemistry and biology and physics and everything else put together. In other words, I used to give this lecture not knowing, of course, what the definition was, but I used as the analogy soap bubbles. Now, I know physicists are fascinated with soap bubbles. And so one soap bubble equals one aspect of a niche. Then when you put two together, what happens to the soap bubble, Vince?
It gets bigger, right?
No, not
Doesn't really?
No, it stays as two.
It stays as two.
But there's a panel that separates the two.
So they never fuse completely.
They never fuse completely. So that panel, now you can imagine yourself as the organism, and if only two things were in the niche, then here's one aspect, here's another aspect. When it comes together, you're in the middle, you're influenced by both of these things, temperature, humidity, amount of oxygen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And one of these can be bigger or smaller, or it can get bigger over time and get smaller over time, like throughout the year, for instance, or throughout the day. It's a very complicated concept, and it depends on knowing what a species is as well. So in this case that we're going to discuss right now, I didn't mean to diverge so much from this, but it's part of this discussion, because what you've got here is a niche that's occupied by a native ladybug, the United States, let's say, the 2-spotted or 4-spotted or however many spots they have, and in comes a 7-spotted Harlequin Ladybird from China and says, hey, I want somebody action, okay? Well, it's like the mob moving in and taking over a block in a city. So what does the domestic ladybird do? The domestic ladybird says, oh, no.
Why can't they coexist?
You know what they start doing? They start eating the eggs of the Harlequin Beetle from China.
Is that how they prevent another
That's how
species?
they prevent invasion.
Is this a general thing among insects?
Not generally, but in this case, because ladybirds are voracious and they're meat eaters.
They are.
That's why they're pest control.
They eat aphids, yeah.
They eat aphids. They eat the eggs of aphids. They eat the larvae of aphids. They eat the adults of aphids. Okay, so now they start eating the eggs of this invader.
Which they can distinguish,
So-
obviously, from their own eggs.
You're exactly right, and because of a chemical that's present in the invader that's not present in their own eggs.
Right.
But it doesn't stop them from eating the eggs, does
Of
it?
course not.
So then what happens, Vince?
Well, I know what happens.
No. I want to lay it out this way because then we can have a discussion about that.
Well, theoretically, the endogenous species, is that the right word?
Yes.
Would prevent the other from
Or the
establishing
the
by
endemic,
eating all the egg.
The endemic species is what they would.
And zootic.
No, that's different. But something different happens in this case,
Well, in this
doesn't it?
case, the endogenous ladybugs die.
And why?
I guess there was something poisonous.
That
in
was the basis for this paper. The name of the paper is "Invasive Harlequin Ladybird Carries Biological Weapons Against Native Competitors."
Right.
That alone says a lot. Okay, that says a lot. And what these investigators noticed.
Wait a minute. Can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
What do we care if these guys come in? They'll eat the aphids, won't they?
They will.
So what?
But there's
We don't care. We just want to know why they persisted, and that's the basis for this paper.
Well, we want to know why they persisted, but we also, when we found out why they persisted, it affected an entire industry.
It did?
It did. When these invading beetles came into France and ate
Yes.
the aphids off the grapes
Yes.
and left their chemical signals behind, something bad happened.
What?
The wine started to taste different.
Was that because the aphids were gone?
They didn't know why. They had to start investigating this whole
Are
thing.
you serious?
I'm dead serious.
So if it's something like wine involved, then we care.
Absolutely.
Here in the U.S., has there been any effect on crops? Does corn taste any different?
We don't know
than
the answer
potatoes?
to that. We
But-
have
So the one example is the wine in France.
Yeah.
So people wanted
in
to know.
Spain too. In Spain,
Oh, very interesting.
So-
So you want your native ladybugs back?
yeah, we want to get rid of these invaders. Well, first of all, we want to know why the native ladybirds are dying, and then secondly, we want to know why the invaders are not welcome.
Well, if you knew that, you might be able to get rid of the invaders, right?
Yeah, one invader, another. Who cares as long as they do the same job, and they do the same job. In fact, they do them better than the native
Curious.
endemic species.
So I guess the first idea was that there was something in the
Right.
invader that.
So
was
what would you
killing.
do to begin with? So what they did
What
was
I would do is grind them up,
that's right.
make an extract, and feed it to the endogenous.
They won't eat like that. They have to eat something living. They're voracious, but they're predators. They need to eat something alive. So in order to carry out these experiments, what the investigators did was they established colonies of endogenous or endemic species and the invader species.
Right.
And then they mixed them together
Right.
and in a cage, which equal parts of each, and they started to lay their eggs, and they had their hosts to feed, or their prey to feed on. Eventually, the cage ended up with only with the invading Harlequin beetles.
Okay.
Okay, now what are you
My,
going to do?
my disc is moving here.
I didn't mean to say Harlequin beetles because that's another insect altogether. This is a ladybug. Okay, ladybug. But remember, they're not true bugs. So that for sure, these invading ladybugs are having an adverse effect on endemic populations, and now they started to look at why.
Why? Okay.
So the first thing they did was they took the hemolymph.
What's hemolymph?
It's a clear fluid that the insect uses to transport molecules of interest.
Is it like blood?
Well, no, it's more like lymph.
So do insects have a circulatory system?
They do.
And what's in it?
It's an open circulatory system.
It's not like ours.
That is, what is in it? That's right. It's a clear, yellowish fluid
So
when you
hemolymph?
extract it. Yeah,
Oh, that's
right.
what's in their open circulatory system.
Yeah, and they've got a five-chamber, or as I recall, it's a five-chamber heart
Okay.
that circulates this hemolymph, and it bathes all the organs inside the insect, and it allows them to deliver food molecules to various
So
places.
they looked in this hemolymph for something?
Well, they wanted to know whether it was something in the hemolymph that was causing these ladybirds to die.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they noticed was if they just fed on the eggs of the invading Harlequin,
That was enough to kill
it
them?
was enough to kill them. Exactly right. So what could it possibly be? So what they found out was that it wasn't the hemolymph. Purified hemolymph does not kill the endemic species.
There's actually a compound in the hemolymph that they focused on.
They did.
It's called harmonine.
Harmony.
Oh, Hermione.
Isn't that a wonderful name, Harmonine? But the genus name for the invading beetles was Harmonia.
Harmonia axyridis.
That's right. Harmonia axyridis.
And this is
Harmonia.
harmonine, which is a
Harmony.
metabolite that accumulates to high levels in the hemolymph. And
That's
you know
right.
what? It has high broad spectrum antibacterial
Look at that.
activity.
Look at that. Isn't that interesting? Maybe we could use that in some other way. But Harmonine,
Yeah, they say it's a lead for the development of new antimicrobials.
that's right. It's
How
like
cool.
the gramicidin molecule was.
It's another reason why you just need to investigate, and you never know what's going to happen.
You don't, and you have to have good powers of
You
observation.
don't just try and cure human diseases. You have to look at other stuff.
That's why we're talking about this.
I know, but the Congress doesn't understand this.
Well, let's send our podcast to them then.
They won't even listen to it.
They don't even listen to their constituents.
So this harmonine.
Harmonine. It's a complex compound which is got a nitrate. It's an NH2 group on the C terminus and an NH2 group on the N terminus of a polypeptide, which has a double bonded carbon that sort of allows it to bend around on itself. It's like a hairpin
Okay.
turn on an RNA molecule. And what you've got here then is a long chain alpha pleated sheet polypeptide produced, and this has great antimicrobial activity. In fact, it puts a microbe to sleep. All right? It's like, sleep. Don't die. Just sleep. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to die. You know why? Because if you don't die and somebody else eats you, you'll kill them. Ha 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 ha. And I will take over the world.
See a cartoon being made here.
Sure. So this is the way the invading Chinese Harlequin Ladybird kills off the endemic species of ladybirds that do not have the endosymbiont, which they discovered by
But
transferring.
wait, before you do
Am
that,
I jumping ahead of this
I
story?
just want, before you do that,
Please.
they did an experiment.
They did.
They took hemolymph
They did.
from Harmonia and they injected it into one of the endogenous, which is
Endemic.
coccinella.
Yeah,
It's one of the endemic.
right.
It didn't kill them.
No. So that,
I'm sorry, it did kill them.
No,
the
no, no.
hemolymph killed them, but not harmonine. Is that it?
no.
Harmonine.
Clarified, pure hemolymph did not kill them.
That's right. No, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Hemolymph, but not harmonine, kills the beetles.
But that was not clarified.
Well, yeah, it's just hemolymph, right?
Well, it wasn't purified.
Right, it wasn't purified. So that leads to the next experiment. But I
Right.
want you to just emphasize
Okay.
that harmonine
All
was
right.
not,
Yeah, harmonine is not the
Thing that's
potential killing agent. That's
but
right.
they thought it might be initially.
Well, they did because it was an easy to identify.
Maybe,
compound.
one theory could be it could kill microbes
Could.
in the coccinella, and that
Yeah, that's
might
right.
be
Exactly.
necessary for them to live.
It could have happened
So
like this, but
then,
it didn't.
Then they looked at this hemolymph.
They did another experiment. The first one was done crudely. They just took a hemolymph and injected it, which was not purified.
Well, but they just looked at it under a microscope.
No,
next.
but I'm
They didn't purify it next.
going to get to that.
looked
So they wanted to know then, is it the solids or the liquids?
You're saying they did a fractionation experiment?
They did.
Well, okay, fine.
They did. They did. Because at some point you're going to have to say what's doing it, right? Okay, hemolymph, but what about hemolymph?
Okay.
You just asked me what a hemolymph was. Well,
Has
insects,
cells in it, right?
they do have cells.
What are they called?
They're called hemocytes.
Very good. I just reviewed a grant about hemocytes.
Great. Those are protection cells that insects use to ward off the evil spirits. That's how that works.
Okay, so they separated the cells from the rest of the hemolymph, and they injected both of these?
Right, and only the solid part of hemolymph killed off the beetles, not the
Okay.
liquid part.
Okay,
So that meant that there's something in there.
maybe hemocytes.
Maybe hemocytes, maybe not, but then they looked closer and they found something, didn't they?
What do you mean by look? You mean actually look under
they
a
looked-
microscope?
They actually looked under a microscope
And
and,
what did they see?
They found a nosema.
Well, could they just look at them and say this is nosema?
They can actually. They're pretty characteristic. They're all the same shape and size. In fact, that's in Figure A in the science paper. And you'll see them. The nosemas are very characteristic, and In the old days, when I was first studying this stuff at Rockefeller, we had a guy there working on nocemas, and his name was Earl Widener. And he was in our laboratory, which was Dr. William Traeger's laboratory, who was a well-known malariologist. And he was in that lab because he thought that nocemas were actually protozoans.
Did you say noceums?
Nocemas. Noceums are little punkies that get through your screens and give you bites. That's different.
What is a nocema?
Well, it turns out that it's a fungus.
It's
a microsporidium.
So what does that mean, microsporidium?
It's a spore former.
Ah.
And it has a unique way of injecting itself into a host cell.
It has to grow inside the cell. Huh?
Yeah,
it's called intracellular.
It's an intracellular
Would
fungus.
you call it a parasite?
You bet.
Good. That's for TWiP.
Sure. No, we're here, but we don't usually cover fungi.
Well, we should.
But it's a eukaryotic cell. It's a eukaryotic cell, Vince.
It's a eukaryotic parasite.
Sure.
But we don't cover fungi because you feel you don't know enough about them, right?
Well, I don't. First of all, I certainly don't. But
how would you nail the identification of these as nocema?
Well, in the old days, they just did morphology, and they didn't really know how to.
Yeah, but these are not the old days.
These
anymore.
are not.
These are not your father's days.
No. So now you can characterize things based on their 16 or 18S RNAs. Ribosomal RNAs.
In this case, it would be 16S.
Correct. And that's how they also determined that Pneumocystis carinii was a fungus rather than a protozoan. They did the same test on that one when they could and found out, no, it's not a protozoan, it's a fungus infection. So, believe it or not, Vince, at that moment, we stopped teaching about Pneumocystis carinii to our medical students because it no longer fit into the pattern of all the other organisms that we were talking about. So we would hope that somebody else picked it up and talked about it because it was very important in the beginning of the AIDS epidemic because people were dying from it. And they said, you're not talking about this anymore? I said, well, it's a fungus. We don't extend our course into the myco world. And they said, no, you have to keep talking about it. So we reluctantly kept it in our curriculum.
So these microsporidia, these nocema,
right,
are present in the Harmonia.
They are, but...
Are they present in the coccinella?
They are not. So you have to ask yourself...
That would make... Can they grow them?
No.
No.
But here's the deal. When the coccinella
yeah,
get infected with the Harmonia endosymbiont, as it's now going to be referred to,
yeah,
the coccinella die.
Yeah, they do that experiment. They actually inject them.
They die.
Do you know how they get the nocema?
Yeah, they eat the eggs.
Well, the coccidia, no, the investigators, how they got enough to do the experiment with. They had to grow up the Harmonia and purify them from the Harmonia because they couldn't grow them in culture.
No, sure, that's exactly right.
And then they inject them in the Harmonia. The coccinella
Took 2
die
weeks.
in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And every dead coccinellity had the endosymbiont.
Here's your experiment. Control injections with cell-free hemolymph from
right.
Harmonia.
That's right.
Did not, actually lacking microsporidia did not
right.
result in case there was something secreted by...
Something else interesting here, Vince, and that is Harmonia, well, harmonin, right, the protection agent for the invading Chinese version. The reason why the Chinese version of the Harlequin Ladybird does not die from microsporidium is because this agent keeps it from growing.
Yeah, Harmonium, it keeps it in check, right?
And
but there's enough to be passed on. So this is passed on in the eggs?
Yeah.
So this implies that somehow it gets into the egg as it's produced in the female, and then...
So we don't know who...
We don't know how
I would love to know who produces the harmonin.
Which cell?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. How would you figure that out, Dickson?
Well, I guess you'd have to set up an insect cell culture, wouldn't you? And there is.
Tough.
No, not tough anymore. Schneider's medium.
No, not the culture. Figuring out.
Oh, right.
What makes it? What kind of cell? It could be hemolymph.
Sure.
It could be another symbiont that makes it. Who knows?
It could, or it could be from their diet even, but probably not from their diet because these were raised in captivity under identical conditions. So remember, a lot of insects can accumulate things from nature that makes them toxic. All right. You know the poison dart frogs of South America?
I don't know them, but I've heard of them.
It has curare.
Yeah.
You know where the curare comes from?
No.
It comes from a plant. It comes from an insect, rather, that they eat.
So these Harmonia
Yeah.
have nosema, which they put in their eggs, and then when another species eats the eggs,
Right.
kills them. What else eats ladybird eggs besides other ladybirds? Would there be other insects too?
Tons.
You think they would be killed by the nosema?
Yeah, they might.
Why do Harmonia have nosema to begin with?
I think a why question cannot be answered, Vince.
For what purpose does
that's better.
does Harmonia have?
The accidental acquisition of microsporidia in conjunction with the, why are they producing harmonine if not to suppress the growth of the microsporidium? What was it there for to begin with? What was its purpose, right? Because when it acquired the microsporidia, it wasn't killed by them, and lots of other things were. So by just simple chance, maybe, a random walk, nature is a random walk.
And then that individual was a
Protected,
survivor.
got advantage, and here we are looking at the spread of this advantage from the perspective of China to Asia to the United States.
So does this suggest to you a way to get rid of the Harmonia? If we wanted to do that, say in France, so that the wine would be better?
Yes.
How?
You might be able to introduce an interfering RNA which prevents the synthesis of harmonine in the Chinese version. And if that happens, their microsporidia will be activated and they'll die.
I would just kill the nosema with DDT.
That's not, pardon me, I didn't mean to spit all over my microphone. That's not going to work, Vince. That's just not going to work.
How do you know?
Because it hasn't worked in the past. Why would you think that could work?
I'm just being silly because I know that DDT is a bad thing.
It's not such a bad thing if it's used correctly, but in this case, all it would do is select for resistance in the ladybirds, right? So what you could do, however, is genetically engineer, let's say, the domestic endemic ladybirds to have nosema.
Yeah, but they also have to have the harmonin, but they don't have harmonin because they're not harmonias.
This is true. Or why are they killed by the nosema? Maybe we could come up with another...
Well, they don't have harmonia.
They don't have harmonin.
It's just too much engineering you're talking about here.
Well, you asked me a question. I was just trying to think through it.
Get rid of the
I know.
harmonia. We don't continue to reintroduce these, right?
You see, people who have commercial crops that are destroyed by aphids...
Aphids or aphids?
Either one. They use ladybirds for their control mechanism.
They still do it.
Yeah, they do. And now they've got a problem because now which one do you pick, right? And that's why these Chinese ladybirds appeared to be such robust species to come in and eat everything.
Dickson, you said there was a problem with the wine, the grapes in France.
There is.
Is there a problem with California or Oregon
Not
or
yet.
New York State grapes or wherever else?
Not yet. The question was raised not in the article in Science because they were restricted to the science part of this, all right? But the news in Science and Technology section of the Chemical and Engineering News, which I subscribe to, featured an almost identical article, except that they expanded the conversation. And harmonin is a noxious tasting compound to humans. And apparently, during the process of harvesting grapes, if the eggs or larvae or adults of these Chinese invading species of ladybirds are included onto the grapes and they crush them up and they release harmonin into the wine-making process, it adds a bad taste to the wine. So here you have a good reason for wanting to get rid of this particular invading species.
So how are we going to do this?
Who's we?
Humans.
And there's another sub-story here that's interesting to talk about, too, and that is, how do ladybirds find their prey? That's
what
a
is
subtext.
Their prey?
Aphids, or aphids, depending on how you pronounce that.
Got you messed up.
You did.
So how do they find them?
Well, interestingly enough, they follow chemical trails.
Uh-huh.
And the chemical trail in this case is a volatile organic chemical, VOC. And the VOCs turn out to be of two kinds. One is enantiomorph beta-farnesene and 2-methylbutanoic acid. Both of these are secreted by the aphids, but they don't produce them, Vince. So what does?
I know, but you should tell them.
Well, there's a Staphylococcus species that lives inside the aphids that produces these noxious chemicals, which I don't know why they're using them, but they are chemicals.
There's a reason.
Well, they're chemical signals that attract in the predators.
Why would an aphid want to attract a predator?
They wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't.
They wouldn't. But this is what the predator has learned to sense.
But we don't know what the aphid is using these things for.
Right.
We don't know. But if we did, we could say, well, they're doomed because somebody out there has learned that chemical signal. And they said, when I smell that, it's food, and I'm going to follow it until I get there. Did we not talk about one other instance like this?
Yes, I was just going to tell you on TWiP. We talked about a plant virus
We did.
that makes the plant
Correct.
produce volatile organic chemicals that attract aphids.
Yes.
So they will feed on the plant, pick up the virus, and spread it to another plant.
That's
right?
incredible.
How about that?
That's another story. But the one I was thinking about was the one of the tobacco plant and the invasion of Manduca sexta, which is the tobacco hornworm, which evolves into a moth. Okay, so this caterpillar is feeding on the tobacco plant, and the tobacco plant says, "Stop it." And so, how does it say "stop it"? It doesn't tell the caterpillar to stop eating. What it does is it produces an alarm chemical, and the alarm chemical resembles a pheromone for a parasitic wasp. And the parasitic wasp thinks, "Oh, I'm going to go mate." And when they get there, they see, oh, well, instead of mating, I guess maybe I'll just penetrate the wall of the Manduca sexta larva and deposit my eggs inside so that my children will have something to eat.
Right.
And this chemical signal came from the damaged plant to call in the cavalry and come help save us. There are so many of these intriguing stories out there. It's just
All right, now I have two things to say.
Sure, please do.
First, in this chemical and engineering news article, they say one of the ideas for saving the French grapes is to take these aphid chemicals that attract the harlequins and put them next to the grapes and get them away from the grapes. Right?
That's a good idea,
Trap
Ollie.
them.
That's a good idea.
The other thing is a question. Now, look, we learned this because we're transporting the harlequins long distances, but they have this on their own, so they must have conditions in their own place, their own niche, where they have to overcome other species also, and then they use this for that, right?
Yeah, the danger is that these volatile organic chemicals are being used by aphids to attract in other aphids also. So you might backfire on this one.
Well, that's maybe why they do it, yeah. You know, the other thing they say here, these harlequins were introduced in the 20th century, but it was only around the beginning of the 21st century that their populations began to grow out of control. I wonder if that coincided with their acquisition of Nosema.
It's a mystery which could be, in retrospect, found out.
If you have samples of the
exactly.
guys from back then,
Exactly. You go to museums and look at their insect collections and do some PCR and find out the age of the beetles and whether or not they've got their endosymbionts. But why would they be producing this harmonin if not to hold their own microbe pathogens at bay? Why else would they produce this?
Well, I mean...
Was it a simultaneous thing, or was it one and then followed by the other?
I don't know if it's for...
These are intriguing questions.
Or for other microbes as well. Who knows? Because you can imagine they get insulted by other microbes.
Who else produces harmonin? Not just this
questions.
particular beetle. I mean, come on. I don't believe that.
It's
That
a good
can't
question.
be right.
Well,
So,
you know, this individual on the paper, they're chemical ecologists, they call themselves.
chemical ecologist.
Francois Verhegen, a chemical ecologist at the University of Liège in Belgium.
And where did you go to school?
At Cornell University.
And who was the chemical ecologist
Was
there?
that Thomas Eisner?
It certainly was.
I thought he was an entomologist.
He was a chemical ecologist.
So he used bugs to study how chemicals are involved in
He did.
ecology
In
and
fact, we just
interactions.
watched one of his videos.
Fabulous video.
Yeah.
I'm just jealous that he was so able to tell that story so easily.
You should have been more jealous of the fact, or you feel the loss of not having heard him lecture while you were a student there, because you could have done that, you know.
I didn't take any of his courses.
See, that's...
I wasn't interested. It was my father's fault.
But you're interested now.
He wanted me to be a doctor.
Right.
So I was focused on human stuff. And
So you're a doctor.
no, I'm not.
A different kind of
but
doctor.
I would have taken entomology for sure if I
Yeah.
had been allowed to let my own interests run free.
Doctors have to know about entomology.
What doctor do you know knows about entomology?
Charles Knirsch.
He's rare.
I didn't say that it was common.
If you go to your practitioner, they're not going to know anything about
No,
insects.
but the dermatologists have
They'll
to.
say kill them with insect repellent.
Dermatologists have to know
That's a
about
cool story, Dickson.
it. Yeah, thank you. I didn't invent that story, but I'm glad I thought
It's
to
nice that you
showcase
found it. It's good that you're still reading. Now I understand why this is a science paper, because
Right.
wine is a big crop.
Huge.
And as Eisner said, if something kills cows, there's money for it. In this case, if something kills grapes, there's money for it.
Oh, or even alters the taste. It doesn't kill them, it just alters the taste.
Well, that's as bad as killing it.
Right.
Because people are not going to buy it. You know. Do you want to do some email, Dickson?
Two clowns are at a wine tasting. One says to the other, "Does this wine taste funny to you?" But I'm bummed.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
Where'd you hear that one? Jesse writes, "Hi, Vince and Dick. Has anyone volunteered to do transcripts for TWiP? I love the show, and I'd love to be able to contribute in some way. Forgive me if transcripts already exist, and I'm just not finding them on the website.
Gee.
If no one is already working on this project, let me know, and I would be happy to pitch in." So, Jesse, no one is transcribing TWiP.
Into what?
You write it. You take the things we say and you make a transcript.
Oh, I thought you meant into another language. I see.
No.
It's
being done for TWiV and TWIM, and I will put you in touch with the people who have kind of made a standard and
That would be
how to
great.
do it. TWiP is a good one to transcribe,
Sure.
especially those early basic episodes,
You
right?
have to bleep out all the jokes and stuff, but that's okay.
I'm a non-scientist with a deep interest in biology, and the TWE shows are all definite favorites of mine. Thanks for making so much great content available.
Great.
P.S. Have you ever played the board game Pandemic? As far as I know, it's the only public health-themed board game out there. It's challenging and lots of fun. Call it a listener pick. Jessie in San Diego. So she sends a link to a video showing people playing this. Now, let me tell you something about Pandemic. There are also
Your son likes those games.
yeah, there are also computer versions. And my son was on the show
Yes.
a long time ago, and I'm
That's
looking
true.
for the
We
episode.
should bring
Here
him
we go.
back.
TWiV, 36.
Come on, let's bring him back.
No, that's not it. That's why. Oh, that was the real Pandemic.
Right.
Let me type my son's name. That would be a good way to
Yes.
find the episode. Viruses in Video Games, episode number 7.
Number 7. Wow.
That was in November of 2008.
Ah,
So
Vince.
my son Aiden discussed viruses in video games, and one of them was Pandemic 2.
Right.
So check that out. But this is a board version of it. Some people like board games.
I love board games.
In fact, my son likes a board game called Diplomacy. He loves it. It's about diplomacy, and he brought it in, and they played it in his class for their final exam.
Your son just got into a very prestigious engineering school, didn't he?
Is it prestigious?
Very prestigious.
Stevens Institute of Technology?
It's a very prestigious.
Really? Is it good?
Yeah, it's one of the oldest and one of the best.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I'm proud of him.
So you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
proud
nice
of him.
kid and he's smart.
He's really a nice kid, and he's going to major in
I have no idea who he takes after.
cybersecurity.
Really, that's a great field to get involved.
His good characters come from his mother, and everything else comes from me. I take responsibility. Now it's great. He's going to have a lot of fun
Yeah,
there, and
yeah.
he's right here in Hoboken.
Yes, he is.
Which is cool.
Yep.
Jen writes, first off, I want to say I recently discovered TWiV and TWiP and love them both. Thank you for such entertaining and informative podcasts. 2 questions. 1, do you guys have any other shows? Yeah, we
You
have This Week in Microbiology, microbeworld.org/TWIM, TWIM. And maybe we'll have another show.
I would like to.
Dickson has an idea, and we're talking about it.
Yes, we are.
But he doesn't want me involved, so
That's
I'm
not
just
true.
advising him.
It's not true. It's not true, Vince.
Kidding. He has a cool idea for a podcast, and if it works, we'll do it, and you'll find it in the next few months, right?
Yes.
The next year?
No, next few months or maybe even weeks.
Okay, number 2. I recently started going back to school and started taking things I was actually interested in, namely biology.
Right.
I had taken a genetics and a physiological psych course previously, but I had no idea how chemistry-intensive basic bio courses were. My problem is I'm absolutely useless at chemistry. While I seemed to score high grades on my exams, all of my labs were awful. What was supposed to be a crystal turned out as brown sludge. What was supposed to change to bright orange turned out dull yellow green.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
And once my prof even had to rush my experiment to a hood because I had somehow made toxic fumes. Even he was puzzled by that one.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any hope for me in any sort of public health or research-related field, or should I just suck it up and go back to being a paper-pushing desk jockey?
Well, what about a tutor?
No, wait. First of all, I don't think you should make predictions about your abilities based on college laboratories.
Right,
Okay?
right.
In fact, chemistry has its own unique issues, and if you want to do biology, you said public health or research-related field, try some bio. How are you in bio? I remember in college I was doing a chemistry lab, and there was a young lady next to me, and she had all sorts of problems because she wasn't paying attention to the details.
Right.
I remember we were doing the Grignard synthesis. Do you remember that?
The Grignard synthesis.
And you had to distill something at some point into a little flask, and she forgot to clamp the flask. So as it filled up, it got heavier and heavier, and eventually it separated from the frit. You know, the glass, the way they fit together, the glasses. It fell onto the bench and shattered, and she lost her sample.
Not good.
And I look back to this day, I had seen her, and I didn't tell her to clamp it because I was busy with
Grignard accident.
Anyway, I think you should give it more of a shot, Jen. I don't think you should discard it at this point. You know, if you're taking courses, take a bio course with a lab and pay attention to the details and see how that works out. That would be my advice. What about you?
No, I would also, if you're weak in chemistry and you want to get stronger, and it's obvious that, you know, the best way to improve is not to keep leading to your strengths.
But bio is different skill in the lab from
I'm
chemistry.
not finished telling her what to do.
You're not?
No, I'm not.
You paused, like Margaret Thatcher. She used to pause, and
So-
her voice went down, and everyone thought she was done
Don't
talking.
you dare accuse me of being like Margaret Thatcher.
You didn't like Margaret?
Not particularly. No, she was a very good friend of Ronald Reagan's. So make a list of, you know, you have a sheet of paper, you put a line down the middle and a line across the top, and on one box you put strengths, and the other box you put weaknesses. And then underneath each you list all of your characteristics as you see yourself. And the strengths you save and the weaknesses you work on. So if chemistry is a weakness that you think is a weakness and you need more help, seek help and go to a tutor, a friendly tutor that can start from scratch and starts with the periodic table.
No,
and
she has no problem with exams. It's the labs that she has an issue
Oh, the
with.
labs are minor details here.
Well, she wants to work in a lab, Dickson. You're not
Well-
listening.
No, I am listening. A lot of biology is not chemical labs. A
I'd
lot of
sort
it
of
is
say, try
manipulation
again.
of specimens.
Try a bio lab.
Yeah, but she said she had problems with chemistry also.
No, that's what she was saying, but I say try bio. She might have no problem with bio.
Okay. Enough said.
Veronica writes, hello, Dasher and Dancer, Donder, and Blitzen. I mean Vince and Dickson. I'm a new listener and loving your podcast. I started with the Racaniello worm and have been checking in each week and going through your archives. Crazy fun.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about half the time, but very impressed with the language and the fact that you both seem to know what you're talking about.
Seem.
I have a daughter in microbiology and another one in health science, and so I'm hoping some knowledge will gradually seep in like osmosis so that they will think I am smart. I appreciate when you analyze and source the scientific words. Ha ha. And you were wondering if the mascatory secretory gel was something you buy at the drugstore. Funny. But anyway, I always understand the parts about the weather and the kinds of weekends you have.
Oh, by the way, what is the weather out there? We didn't even discuss that right now.
Not bad today.
We just had a period of rain yesterday.
It's
but
not raining today.
No,
it's
it's not.
chilly, though.
A little bit on the cool side
Yeah.
for the
You
summer.
want to know the temperature, Dickson?
I'll bet it's 73 degrees.
No, it's not even close. Dickson, I'm so disappointed. I just love to give you hell.
Heck,
Just
we're
give me
giving
the-
each other heck.
Give me the weather for the airport in Seattle, which is where I was.
We don't want that.
last week.
We
Come
want-
on, current location.
Newark.
Refresh. All right, I'm going to have to manually pick. I don't even have New York on here.
Oh.
Current location. New York, New York. Here we go. 18 degrees Celsius. So it's in the high 60s.
Okay, that wasn't that far
Anyway,
off.
it's a lot of white clouds up there, but it is sunny.
Yeah.
She continues, I have a query. Generally, is it correct that Dickson trusts technology can solve our problems, but Vince, on the other hand, might feel we are moving further and further from our biological roots, and this is what is causing a lot of our problems? For example, Dickson says man's job is to colonize space, but Vincent says he's too busy here on Earth. Dickson's solution to our food shortages is vertical farming, a grand tech fix. So, do you both also see this difference between yourselves? Or is that terribly simplistic? I would like to hear your thoughts about that if it doesn't take you too far from your parasites. Thank you so much for the show, Veronica from BC, which is British Columbia.
Yes.
Not BC, as in the time scale, right?
Right.
I like technology, and I think it makes our world run. Without science and technology, we wouldn't have what we have now, and I think what we have now is great, but we're screwing things up in many ways, and we have to fix them and forget about going out into space. I don't think we need to do that, although it would be wonderful to find out what's out there and how it works.
Yep.
We need to solve our problems here.
No, we both agree on that.
I thought you wanted to go visit space.
Well, eventually, but I want to solve the problems here first.
Dixon, do we have a fundamental difference in how we view the world?
I don't think so.
Okay, but we do disagree on a lot of things.
That's different.
But you want to, you think technology can solve our problems.
It has in the past.
And I agree. But I do think some technologies, like the gasoline engine, is screwing things up.
Correct. So
We need to fix it. But things, you know what the main problem with the world is? It's mainly driven by profit. And so the gas engine is the cheapest thing right now, and that's why it's taking a long time to get rid of it. And we'll wait until cheap oil is gone before really getting a solution. And that's why you drive a fraudulent car, for example.
he keeps talking about my Prius. No, that's a step towards the right direction.
Any other comments?
No, I mean other than the fact that if without the technologies that we currently take for granted, this podcast wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, of course.
And we do burn a lot of fossil fuels, and we're both against that. And we would love to see free energy for everybody, you know. And I've heard a TED talk on that subject, which actually claims that it's possible. So, using technological breakthroughs like superconduction and harnessing the sun in a way that's acceptable, that doesn't leave a big carbon footprint behind, to manufacture the mechanisms for capturing the sun. Like, for instance, an artificial leaf. I just read something about that, which is quite unique. It's a three-layer substance, all right? There's two layers that trap the layer in between, and there are chemicals in between these two layers that do the same thing that chlorophyll does, which is capture photons and turn it into chemical energy.
Cool. That's neat.
And then converts it to electricity. So imagine all of your windows made out of that. Your
Right.
whole house could run on it, and all the sun has to do is shine. And excess energy could be stored overnight to use during the nighttime. So technology has the potential, taking advantage of what we know in science, to actually solve a lot of these big problems that we're facing right now. So I have a belief that the human brain, with its quadrillion neurological connections, could eventually wade through all of this junk and solve the big problems. That's what I believe. I do believe that. And I
agree with you.
I don't think vertical farming is the end-all to the answer of how to give land back to nature and still provide food for people. I think there are many other solutions possible in this one. But it's a beginning. So if you don't start, you'll never finish. So that's the point. You have to start somewhere, so we're starting here. Mr. Who's the head of Tesla Motors? Egon
Shield?
Yeah, that's right.
No, he's an artist. He's compared with Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, that's
Musk.
right. Musk. Well, you know, Musk. That's okay.
I was thinking of Egon Schiele, who's an artist, right?
Exactly right. So Egon Musk believes religiously in the electric car. So much so that he's about to establish a transcontinental charging station that you can drive an electric car from New York to California, and you can refill your batteries every 200 or 300 miles.
So in the big scheme of things, how do airplanes contribute to global warming?
Huge.
So that's not going to be
huge.
taken care of by electricity.
No, it isn't.
Not enough power to fly, right?
It's not. That's right.
Today, but maybe.
But biofuels, see, we're running airplanes on biofuels, and that's the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. They're all converting to that, Vincent.
And it's not going to be a
You know
problem
why?
for
Because-
global warming?
No, because you get a recycling of the carbon through the plants to make the new set of biofuels.
Okay.
So that's a carbon neutral solution if they could ever get it underway.
You think they will?
They're going to have to. Economically speaking, already they want to do it because oil is too expensive. Imagine being in the Air Force, you're protecting this country from invaders, and you say, well, I'm sorry, we can't fly today because we can't afford the fuel. Huh? My son was in the Air Force. He actually told me that story once.
They couldn't fly
They
because
had
of costs?
3 days at the end of the month. They had no budget left for the fuel, so the
Really?
jets had to stay at Luke Air Force Base in the hangars. They couldn't
I
actually
thought
go out and fly.
the armed forces had all the money they wanted.
Well, they thought they did, but apparently they don't. No, they're
How long
limited.
ago was this story?
This is back in the late 1980s.
All right. Peter writes, Dear Dickson and Vincent, I am a recently retired biomedical scientist, having worked my entire career in hospital labs, mainly in microbiology, but in my latter years as a manager. I've been fascinated by parasitology since I was a student. However, I do not have a formal qualification in the area other than a few lectures as part of my training. It was therefore a delight to discover TWiP, and I have been listening avidly over the last few weeks. Fascinating. You see, Dickson, email after email showing you how people like this, but you don't care.
Vincent continues to taunt me with these inflammatory statements that are not true, by the way. All you out there should know this by now. Even though at one point we had a mock threat to end TWiP and wanted to know what the listener response was. We got an overwhelming response to continue. Of course, we knew this was going to happen anyway, but I love doing this. It's just a matter of when.
Okay. Find the time.
Yes.
I'm wondering if Dickson knows of any distance learning courses in general parasitology. I would be very interested in following such a course.
Maybe we'll make one.
You don't know of any?
I don't. But there might be some. If you go to the American Society for Parasitology website, they may be able to recommend something.
I just looked online here and I don't see any in Coursera.
But you know what? All of my lectures, Vincent, are put up that I gave to the medical students here. Those are available through TWiP, I thought.
They are.
So they could access those if they wanted.
Where did I put those?
Yeah, where did you put those?
Let's go to the website, microbeworld.org/TWiP.
Right.
They should really have their own...
There are only 8 of them. I mean, there should be more, but there are only 8.
Yeah, we had put them in a particular episode. I have to search them for the link. I will put the link in the show notes. Let me write a note here. Put
Note to self.
link to DGD lectures in show notes.
You know, one of the best-selling books right now on the Amazon list. No, it's called Note to Self.
What is that about?
It's about reminding yourselves of all the things that you should have been doing and weren't.
Finally, just a small point arising from an observation made by Dickson on TWiP 33. I think the rare human thorny-headed worm, Maniliformis has the cockroach Periplaneta americana as an intermediate host rather than a paratenic host.
Fair enough. I mean, it actually requires the cockroach for some developmental stage of the parasite.
That would be an intermediate host? Okay. You said paratenic probably, but you don't remember.
Did I waffle on that point? Because if I did, then I'm glad I did, because then I didn't exactly say.
Go back and listen.
I will go back and listen.
Perhaps as I listen to the next podcast, another TWiP aficionado has already pointed this out. If so, please ignore this. No one has pointed it out.
Nobody.
Looking forward to seeing many more new TWiPs in the future. All the best. Peter from Cavan. Do you know where that is?
I don't.
Ireland.
Cavan, is it now?
Tim writes, in TWiP 54, there were a lot of pseudo-apologies for Dickson's asides, and I have to say no apologies are needed. I was unaware of the fascinating behavior of fig trees and their relationship to monkeys and bats. Please continue to wander off subject as the fancy strikes because it generally leads to me learning something I may never have come across any other way. I may be partial to this type of discourse as I ramble in both discussions as well as emails, so I will end this with a keep up the good work and go back to the task at hand of feeding this new calf who is waiting so patiently for me to finish up my email. Tim is from Zweber Farms. He is a farmer.
Wow.
And
Nice.
You can find his farm at zweberfarms.com. What are you doing? Going to cough? Oh, now you have to make me edit.
Sorry,
Zweber
Vince.
Farms, family farm since 1906.
And
He has a website.
And by the way, farmers that raise animals, not plants, but plants too, they're intimately concerned with parasitism.
I'm sure.
Intimately, because all their livestock gets invaded periodically with all kinds of intestinal helminths.
He's in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
And he raises pasture beef, pasture chicken, free-range eggs, and all natural pork. We sell all our natural meats direct from our farm and straight to your family. I'm getting hungry. I should have gone to visit when I was in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Niall writes, interesting name, Niall. Hello, my name is Niall, and I am a recent high school graduate working on a virology research project at Rocky Mountain Laboratories.
Wow.
Part of the NIH-NIAID in Hamilton, Montana.
Yep.
Dickson may also be interested to know that I am an angler, and my father is the local fisheries biologist working for the state.
Get out.
As such, I have heard a fair bit about whirling disease and would like to hear more if you haven't already done a show
No, we'll
on
do
it.
one on. We'll do one on it. That's a great one.
You could do it?
I can do that.
Can you write it down? Because you don't remember it.
Well, we'll just do whirling disease. We'll do whirling disease. That's another bioinvasion.
Keep talking.
It's a protozoan parasite that was brought from Europe to America via rainbow trout, which was brought from America to Europe.
All right. Can you find a paper or two? And we'll do
No,
it?
tons of them. Tons of them.
Let's see. Also, I have a quick question to ask you both. I will be attending Montana State University next
That's a great
year.
place. Great place.
And majoring in microbiology.
Wonderful.
I am undecided as to what field of microbiology I will go into, but have been intrigued by the following: virology, parasitology, especially neglected tropical diseases, and the microbiome. I was just wondering if either of you had some tips or advice for an aspiring microbiologist. Anything helps. Thank you both a bunch. I'm a big fan of TWiP, and TWIM, and would love to hear what you have to say.
Wow.
P.S. I just talked to my boss here at Rocky Mountain Labs, and apparently he knows Vince. His name is Marshall Bloom. I absolutely do know Marshall Bloom.
See that? Weren't
Now-
you out there for a while, Vince? Didn't you go there once?
I'm going next year,
you gotta
but
go
she'll
next year.
be gone
Oh, yeah,
by
right.
then. Or he. Is Niall a man or a woman? I don't know.
I didn't want to meet his father, though.
Yeah, you do. I know a
As well as
professor.
Niall.
I know a professor at Montana State University in Bozeman, okay? And I did a lecture in her course. What's her name?
Uh-oh.
I'm going to find it because
And
you
you're
have to
gonna
go seek her out.
Edit that part.
No, I don't edit anything.
Uh-oh.
All right. So, wow. Here's my blog about my virology class.
Huh.
So the teacher was Michelle Hardy, professor of immunology and infectious diseases at Montana State University.
In Bozeman.
So in Bozeman, Niall, you get in touch with Michelle Hardy. You tell him Vincent sent you, and maybe you could work in her lab or whatever. It's a connection. Follow it up.
And the fishing is good in Bozeman as well.
But take as many courses as you can. Do
Absolutely.
labs. See what you like, and try and work in someone's lab. So that's why
right.
I'm giving you Michelle's name. She's cool,
Right.
And you should check her out either way.
And I'm a big fan of the microbiome also. So I would say if you decided to go into that, you have a bright future because we now know how to analyze it, and it's got lots of potential for explaining things.
Right. Now there was one more email, but it's gone, so we'll just have to end it there
Oh.
and read it next time.
Okay.
Why, are you sad?
Yeah. I don't like this to come to an end. We do this so infrequently.
There is, well, let me see if I can find it here. Would have been the last Digression de Despommier. That was the subtitle of the email from Tim. Digressions de Despommier. Oh, that's a great name for a episode,
I tend to digress. That is true.
Where is this? Cockroaches. We already got that.
There's something in New York City called The Moth. I don't know if you know that program or not. It's
Moth?
The Moth. It's called The Moth. And it's a personal recounting of some incident in your life in front of a live audience.
Who does that?
Anybody. They can request to be put onto The Moth, and then they ask you what topic you're going to talk about.
Nice.
And you do that. And this sounds like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm going crazy.
The Moth. This is the science equivalent of The Moth. Here we are recounting. We've talked a lot about our lives.
Stories told live.
Yeah, that's right.
In New York City.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Do they record it and make a podcast?
They do, and then you can check it out on NPR.
Well, this is very popular. Why?
It is.
Why isn't TWiP as popular?
Who said it's not?
I'm sure they have tens of thousands more listeners. I want tens of thousands of TWiP listeners.
Yeah, I wish.
But you and I could do a weekly radio show, and people would listen.
I would love that. I would love that.
Well, we're doing it.
We are.
You can find TWiP at iTunes and at microbeworld.org/TWiP, where you can find all the show notes we refer to in the emails that we get. They're all reproduced there. And if you like what we do, please go over to iTunes and rate the show. Give it some stars or a comment that helps to keep us visible in the iTunes directory of Apple. And if you have questions or comments, we love getting them. Send them to twip@twiv.tv. TWiP. Don't send them to twiv@twiv.tv because I get confused and I can't tell which show they're for. Okay, we got twiv@twip. No, I'm all confused. twip@twiv.tv. Dickson Despommier can be found at Racaniello.org, medicalecology.com, and .org, medicalecology.org, really, and verticalfarm.com. That one I know because .com is the big bucks.
Oh, boy.
And you want to get rich. Why are you laughing? It's true.
It doesn't mean that at all.
Every day you talk about millions and millions.
No, the com and the org, that means that somebody else has the org. So you had to take the com instead. There are lots of other...
Thank you for joining us today, Dickson.
It was a pleasure. You know this.
And
had a great time.
Hopefully we can do this again in 2 weeks when you come back from France.
Yes.
Bring back some grapes.
Sure, and some brie.
I'm Vincent Racaniello, and I have a blog that has pretty much everything I do. It's virology.ws. So check that out. All the podcasts, my writing, my courses, everything's there. Now, when you listen to TWiP, there's music at the beginning and the end. That's composed by Ronald Jenkins, who allows us to use it. I asked for his permission. You can find his work at ronaldjenkins.com. You have been listening to This Week in Parasitism. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon. Another TWiP is parasitic.